Hello, folks. Welcome back to Sound Design for Relaxation, Meditation, and Sleep. I'm your host, Dr. Lawrence W. Moore of the Wayfarer Project. In this series, we are basically looking at techniques that I utilize in my Sound Experiments series, Sound Experiments for Relaxation, Meditation, and Sleep. I think from now on, I'm going to start abbreviating that as just simply RMS. That might confuse some people because of root mean squared being an important aspect of audio analysis and so forth. But we all know what we're talking about: relaxation, meditation, and sleep. So anyway, I've gone off on a tangent there, but yeah, I think I'll be calling it Sound Design for RMS in the YouTube titles, at least, because the limitation of the length of the title's gotten smaller, and basically I want to be able to use most of the title to describe, more of what's happening in that episode rather than the title of the whole series taking up most of the title. So anyway, this little heads up there. In this episode, we are going to be looking at how to make bird sounds in VCV Rack. I do all my sound design in VCV Rack these days. Maybe not forever, but at least these days. It is a free software, and if you have not checked it out yet, please do so. I do have a series, Learn Synthesis with VCV Rack, on this channel that you can check out to do so. And to learn synthesis and or VCV Rack little by little, or at whatever speed you wish to take. Otherwise, if you utilize VCV Rack and you know your synthesis, then you can jump right into this episode. This series is also for those who like to listen to my sound experiences and just want to know more about what's being done in them, and maybe so you get to know the terminology, and that allows you to communicate with me about what things are working for you and what things maybe aren't, so I can continue to create better and better sound experiences. So anyway, let's see how to make these bird sounds. Now, I should say I was inspired to do this by someone who left a comment a few episodes back. Goes by Shams Kits, I believe is how you pronounce it. So I went to the channel, and there's some VCV Rack stuff there, and I checked out a video that was just sound only, well, with the visuals of the patch, but it was kind of dark, so I couldn't even really see it. Just basically the beautiful sound of birds. And so in the title it said what additive oscillator was used to make that, so I went, added it to my library in VCV Rack. It's a free module called AD simply, from Van Tys. Which is the only module by Van Tys in the VCV Rack library. But anyway, I downloaded it, added it to my library, and I only got started working with it today, in fact. And since I couldn't really see on screen what the settings were or all the other modules that might have been used to kind of like transform the sound, I basically said, okay, I'll start with this module and see what I can do with it. And I think I made a pretty cool bird sound. And this is something that can be continued in the future in both in my music and these sound experiences. It'll be a little while before I, am able to implement it into one of the sound experiences, because right now, although it's a pretty bird sound, those experiences, especially since they're can be used for meditation and sleep, you got to be really careful and crafty with the sounds you use, so that the bird tweets don't keep you awake or keep you from focusing. So anyway, let's get on with it and see how to make these sounds. Okay, folks, so here we are in VCV Rack, and just a few modules for setting up the sound initially. I'm going to play the sound for you, and then I'm going to go through and talk about the hookups. This I had to begin with the MIDI in, but am I even using it? I don't think I am, but I'll check before I disconnect it. All right. But basically what we have here is a 4 oscillator set, 4 LFOs from SurgeXT that I'm using to modulate some settings in random from VCV itself, and also modulate some settings here in add. Here's the additive synthesizer that is basically producing the sound. With some things being modulated either through random and that being affected by the LFOs, and also I have some limitations on it with the attenuverter here from Bufaco. All these are free modules. And then the Bufaco ADSR is basically shaping the sound's amplitude. And I'm basically using this as a VCA right now. After we hear the sound and I talk about this setup here, I am going to do a few things to see if we can go further with it, to see if we can kind of improve on it a bit. Although, you'll hear right now that it sounds pretty good. There may be some parameters that need a little more coaxing and stuff, but this is a good start. So let's look at what we have here. I'm going to just turn that down momentarily. Maybe a little bit louder, so right about there. Okay, so the heart of the sound is being made here with add. This is, of course, once again, the brand is called Van Ties, V-A-N-T-I-E-S, and there's a space between Van and Ties, kind of like a name. It might be Van Tees, I don't know, but it's T-I-E-S. And this is the only module under that brand. It's just called 80 Add, but it's an additive oscillator. Additive synthesis is basically when you utilize different sine tones at different harmonic or partial frequencies to a fundamental to create your different sound colors. And theoretically, since all sound is composed of sine waves, you can make any sound you wish, but with limitations of computing power in oscillating all these myriads of sine tones, usually additive oscillators tend to be something where you have a selected array of harmonics or partials that you can put in the sound. So anyway, the way this is working right now, I was hooking the MIDI up to the pitch here, volts per octave, but yeah, I'm not really using that. Basically, the tuning is done here when you're not using MIDI to control pitch. You have an octave selector here. I have it all the way up to 6. And then you have your fundamental pitch that you can set here. That I have on A. I could go through these just so you can hear them. See how it raises in pitch there? All right, so that would be turning up the pitch. I would have to read the manual to know why. All right, well, I guess these are pitches: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And so it's not in CB or semitones or cents or anything like that. It's not slotted, like you can go in between and I guess get like a D sharp-ish or E flat-ish here. But anyway, that's how they lay it out. So I'm just keeping it down here on C, and this all the way up to on octave 6. And then down here, there is an FM input, FM, I guess linear FM, that I am sending information to. So it is modulating the frequency. And that frequency is basically like the highness and lowness of pitch of the tweets you're hearing. And basically, by way of the Bafako attenuverter, I'm able to limit the range of the frequencies that get selected, but they're being randomly generated here by the random module from VCV. Basically, you have a setting for rate. That's how quickly a new random value in CV is generated, which can then be used to control the pitch. A probability, like whether it happens or not. I have the probability not all the way up, but pretty high, like maybe 75%, something like that. And then here I have random. This will be like the random range, and I have it basically somewhere around the middle. I've tried. You see how as I turn it up, I can get much higher and much lower. But I kind of like it here. Although now and then, I could probably set up something where it could ramp it up a little bit and then pull it back down. So I heard a little bit like almost like a slewing from value to value when I did that. But anyway, the attenuverter is really keeping the range controlled here. So when I do this, it's really going to be kind of blocked by this. But it'll still have somewhat of an effect. It doesn't really allow me to expand the range so much, but it as you hear there, for some reason, you know, some of what comes out gets bent down more. Or I'm just imagining it. This may really not be doing much of anything because this sound is pretty complex in its changes. Over here, I do have the shape all the way up. I play with different shapes here. And I found that really the only main difference is when it's all the way down, it sounds a little bit more computery. So I keep it all the way up. And I'm coming out of the smooth output here. You have 4 outputs. Step, where like it just skips from each value, each randomly generated value, one to the next. This would give you like a line segment in between each one. And this would give you an exponential curve between each one. And this gives you a smooth in between each one. I don't know how that is different than a line segment or a curve in between. Maybe it's really just a different type of curve than an exponential curve. Something like that. So anyway, it's what sounded best to me. All right, so these random values are being generated and going in here to modulate pitch. Really, it's allowing me to change the pitch settings from these. Of course, if I change the octave range, that will affect it. But we're still getting random. Or I could do something like this. Reduce the octave. And turn this up. It's like tuning within the octave, basically. So it's skewing it a little lower than it was before. Anyway, pretty cool. Now, the random needs a little modulation itself. and I'm using these 4 LFOs from SurgeXT to do some of the modifications here. Basically, this oscillator here, the 4th one, is oscillating the rate at which the random numbers are generated. Otherwise, you'd hear a consistent pattern of it going from one pitch to the next at the same speed. It would just not sound realistic. Sound very robotic. So I'm modulating that speed, the rate at which random pitches are generated, with a sine wave here, and its rate is 0.26 hertz. But this rate is being changed. I have the modifier here being LFO number 3. And so LFO number 3, which is a sample and hold shape, basically it goes to a different sample value or a different value, one to the next in almost like a seemingly random type of way. And then that is being done at 0.06 hertz. And so very gradually, it basically changes the rate or affects the rate of this oscillator here, which is actually changing the rate value here. Otherwise, you'd hear a smooth transition from fast to slower, to fast to slower, to fast to slower, at this, changing back and forth between those different speeds in a regular pattern. This allows me to make that pattern of change less regular, but allows me to use the sine wave shape here, so when it switches speeds, it sounds like a smoother transition. And here, the modification of the rate of change, as you see here, is within this range here. There's no real numbers to describe it. It's just I went visually and aurally and selected about this much. So it's from really low to about a little past a third of the way up on the rate knob. Okay, so next I have here this cable, which is an LFO controlling another parameter, but this one is a parameter directly in the additive oscillator. It's this parameter here, lowest partial. A partial is a frequency above the fundamental pitch that is non-harmonic. Basically, it's a non-whole number times the fundamental. Basically, it's like something that sounds less harmonious with the fundamental pitch, which is the bird chirps you're hearing. Every now and then, especially if I exaggerate it a bit here, you'll hear kind of like a, there. You hear how it's like a little bit of a trill? That's basically partials being added. But I keep it fairly low around here, but it does vary. So every now and then you do hear a little trill sound. And that variation is being fed in within this range I set on the attenuverter. Basically, what is the offset? Taking any values coming in from the LFO, offsetting them a certain amount, and then allowing them to go up to a certain amount. With this lower setting right here. Well, no, actually, this is the offset. I just looked at it. This is the offset. This is the attenuverter, basically the attenuator, and this is shifting by the offset. Basically, it's like gives you a range in which, the sound will be allowed to go. So there's only a certain amount of trilling that can happen. When this knob is turned further down, it is like less trilling. These values were too high. They sounded too harsh. So I put it here. And then here, there's even a range allowance that I put. Yeah, you can go all the way down, which is super smooth. Maybe I could stand to turn this up a little bit. But even that, when I turn this further up, I did hear an effect. So our attenuator is not keeping us from getting to those values if we want to shift them over. So anyway, but that is being modulated, like basically the amount is being modulated with this LFO, and then this LFO is being varied by this LFO once again. See how it's hooked up to its modifier, and modifier 2 is set to a more narrow range here, because I don't want to get up into the higher range for the lowest partial, because what that does is it sounds a little bit too discordant. I want these slight trills now and then. Now the other parameters here, this is on default, the number of partials basically, and as you see it's pretty low, and that's why when you turn this up, pretty much you hear a trill. You don't hear an array of partials. But this is its default setting, but I like to keep it here because otherwise it gets a little too grainy with all the partials. So I keep it low and allow this some freedom here so that you hear some trills now and then, but not like an array of partials that would be too discordant. And then here I have the stretch setting, which I guess basically stretches the array of partials that are generated up higher or lower in frequency. Its default is 1, and since I'm so high in pitch, it's already gets too high. So I pulled it down to near 0. Right there. It's near 0. But it's kind of hard to find. It's like really fine-tuned in there. Probably something worth looking at as far as what the value is. 0.004 and so on. Yeah, okay. So anyway, that is how that is set, basically the partial array. And then over here, tilt. With my settings here, it doesn't really do anything, so I just left it on 0. And I want my settings here, so I'm not going to basically add a parameter change that isn't going to give me the sound I'm looking for. And the same thing here with, keep pitches. And basically, the settings I have is a small number of partials. We're not hearing much in the way, in addition to the fundamental sine tone. You hear a little bit come in here and there, but not much. And that is fine for this bird sound. If you want something that's a little bit more harsh or raspy, you can play with some of these and see what you get. This does have a stereo width setting. So like right now, it's just centered. And whether I go left or right, whatever distance I go, that's how wide it will basically generate the sound out to the left and right, because it is a stereo output here. I might leave this center and use a second one of these, a second set of all these modules, but with slightly different settings, to give me a right side version, so it sounds a little bit more like two birds chattering with each other. Now, there is an envelope on this sound. It's right here, the FACO ADSR, which is controlling the left and the right outputs the same. And basically that's being generated right here by the trigger output of random. So as the random events are generated, it basically opens the envelope and allows the sound through. And then here I have the attack set to right about, you see that's too quick, right about here. Well, that's a cool sound. I was just seeing if any modulation of this would be advantageous. Maybe slight ones. But anyway, I'll leave it there. And then the release is right around here. There, they basically, the different chirps would connect together too much. Right about there. There we go. But there is the RCV inputs here to modulate those if I should choose to in the future. Okay, so now, as I said before, I do want to try to improve on this a little bit here. I am going to bring out the Mind Meld mixer here, because eventually, I'm going to use an 8-channel one for now. Eventually, I'd like to have multiple of these bird sounds so that you can hear a few of them. Let me see. I think I will put the expander for the aux sends in and maybe try an effect on it. And I'm going to go with a free one so folks can also match it if they wish. The SurgeXT reverb. So basically, I'm going to hook up aux send 1 to that reverb. Left and right channels. And then here's the return from the reverb back into the mixer. We'll see how it sounds with a little bit of reverb on it. And what I'm going to do is basically, we're not going to hear things for a little bit, because the audio output here is going to receive from the main outs of the mixer. Okay, there we go. So we're not going to use this mixer anymore. I basically am going to have the output from our envelope going straight into channel 1. The volume CV input, and then we'll take the left and right channels from add here and go to left and right inputs here. There we go. So it's really the same sound, just now going through this mixer. Let me see what happens when I put a little reverb on it. Now, I don't know what reverb this is. We're going to... That actually sounds pretty cool. Although, I think the time is a little bit too much. But here it's expressed as size and decay. I'll leave the decay where it's at, but let's reduce the size. Now, if you're listening to headphones, you'll hear this better then. Raise the diffusion a little bit. And then, yeah, there is some damping that can be done with high and low frequencies and modulating them. But, yeah, there's also a bunch of presets here. I'll come back to this if some of the presets don't work out. Yeah, that's better. I don't hear like a little bit of an echo that I was getting on the other settings. So that sounds pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is see if we can get 2 of these going on, and then we can work with the pan of each one. So I'm going to select them, copy these. Let's put a blank panel in just to separate them visually. There we go. How did copying and pasting that shut it off? Copy. Paste. Okay, that's bizarre. I've never had something like this happen before, because this has not changed. It's still hooked up. Let me see something. You can't have more than one ad at the same time. See? Well, that just threw things down the toilet. All right, let's see what we can do about this. I have 2 parameters being varied here, but there might be another way of making the left and the right sound a little bit different. Let's try a chorus effect. And I'll use a free one here because the VCV chorus is actually in Rack 2 Pro. SurgeXT chorus and ensemble. I think we'll go with chorus. And what I can do is take a second output from add. There can be only one. Ugh. I have not had that before. Okay. So that's the chorused version of the sound. And it's laying down all over the other one. Maybe here, you turn down the mix a bit. Wow. Ooh. Depth. No, but when I turn the mix down low, that means there should be very little, if not none, of the chorus in there. Oh, I know why. The ADSR is not hooked up. So that was not the chorus doing it. Let's turn the mix back up to 50%. Yeah, it's adding a little too much. Lower the depth. This is allowing me to add a little bit more of a trill type sound to it than what was there to begin with. But really, it just sounds like an affected version of the original. Yeah, because I'm not really getting a second pair out of this. We can spread it using this. I mean, that's cool sounding. But now that I've kind of checked that chorus out, I have an idea. Well, I'm taking a risk here by doing this. But I'm going to copy this. Let's put a blank panel in so it's easy to see the difference between the two sections. I'm going to try going without the additive oscillator. And what I'm going to do, let's just mute this for a second. Let's use a VCO, just a regular VCV Rack VCO. And here, this is controlling the frequency modulation. Do the same thing here. Now, I want to put an envelope on it before I can really kind of hear it and test it out. So let me get another one of these and set up the trigger for it. This is already hooked up, but this one here affects this parameter here, which I'm going to try to do with a chorus now. I think I could just add the chorus to a sine wave and get a very similar effect. But let's get the envelope in. I'm flying by the seat of my pants, folks. Let's see what we get. All right. Trigger output here. I usually try to make it blue. Yep. For triggers and green for gates. So let me hook you up down here on channel 2, volume. Here, just put it there for now. I could get rid of the second one. That's coming from the original ADSR. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to take you, and we're going to put your audio into here. Now, this is going to be way off the start. Okay, we are coming out the sine wave. Oh, yeah, no, I hooked this up. That's right. All right. This is coming in here, but I didn't set this yet, but I should be hearing just the output of a sine wave on middle C, pretty much. Except for the gate. Okay. Yeah, so the gate is closed now. Shouldn't this be triggering the gate? I see it going off. Ah, but we have all new settings, that's why. Let's set those and set the ADSR to trigger. Now turn frequency up. There we go. We got ourselves a bird sound. Now, before it goes in there, we can run it through a chorus to get some of the trills. So what I'll do is hook this up to left output of the chorus. Hook this in there. Now, is it the depth that needs modulation? It's too fast. Somewhere between here and here. Up there. All right, so I'm going to think about 10 o'clock, but leave you in the middle so that the modulator that I had from before, which was coming out of this range here. Hopefully the ranges are about the same. Let's see what happens. I don't really, I guess, need to use this on this type of bird sound because now I'm going into this guy as an effect, and this has a built-in range. Selector there. So I don't think I need that lower attenuverter. Here, let's see here. I might be able to use this for panning changes. What's being altered now is not the speed, it's really the, that speed is the same as before, except maybe, you know, it's modulating pitch, but this is modulating the rate of change here. So that's really all the same. The rate of random change is the same. Right about there. And so now we have our bird sound. I'm going to save this as a different file name, as a different version. But the limitation we had before, and I didn't know that before starting this episode. Let's go here, TWP sound designed for relaxation, meditation, and sleep. I didn't know that you couldn't have more than one of those add oscillators. So this is 009A, B, excuse me. How to make bird sounds with VCV Rack. So that's the B version. I still have the original there. But what I'm going to do now is let's try this. Let's take another view. Put you here. Now, the main thing that we'll want to do is make sure the series of random events are offset from one another. And now you're going to go into channel 1. And let's put the gate on it. Now, the ADSR is receiving a trigger, and then it becomes an envelope, and I do those in green. Okay, so let's... Now they're kind of overlapping each other. Let me hear it. Two of them together are creating a little distortion, so I'm going to turn them down. So now we have multiple birds. Now, movement, I don't think I'm going to add movement because typically birds sing while they're perched and not while they're flying. What happened here? Did I somehow create a second mixer at some point? There we go. That sounds pretty cool. So there you go. I mean, there's multiple ways of doing this, but I basically was hearing pretty much what I was producing with add was mostly a sine tone. There wasn't too much additional sine waves in it. And what little additional was happening was something I could achieve using chorusing, which is basically having another instance slightly offset in pitch of the sound. And it sounds pretty cool. So anyway, folks, thank you for joining me. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you like version 1 better or version 2 better? And yes, I will be working towards implementing these in some of the sound experiences. But it'll take a little time because now that I can make multiple ones, I'm going to see if I can make an array of them and vary them a little bit. And then create some space. I need to modulate, like turning the volume down, then maybe turning it back up. Just so, like the birds, it's not like one bird sitting there just going to town for an hour straight or 2 hours straight. They typically do stop for a little bit and pause. And right now, the pauses in between using this method aren't quite long enough. So I'm going to work on that. But eventually, this will be hopefully added to my array of tools. So once again, thank you for joining me. Let me know what you think of the comment section. Please hit that like button if you found this to be valuable. And there we go. There's a thumbnail. Until next time, take care and stay free. Free like a bird.